Hello everyone, welcome to SwitchUp, and today we've got another one of our gaming on a budget videos for you. In this series I pick out some suggestions for games that you can buy for a budget price, looking at a number of different price points, in this case ranging from £1 something up to £10 something, or of course your regional equivalent. Just before we get started, as I said, this is part of an ongoing series, so if a game that you feel is quite obvious isn't on this list, it may well be because it's been in another part, and I will put the links to all of the previous episodes in the top pinned comment if you want to have a look. Also, it's worth mentioning that games for the £1 up to the £3-4 tier are generally quick and easy to play, high score chasers, things like that, as you would expect for that price point, but I do try to pick out some more fleshed out experiences for the higher prices, the £8, £9, £10 ones. I also try to pick games from a variety of genres and with a variety of different art styles. Okay, with all that said, let's get started. First up then, for the £1 bracket, we have a game called Pocket MiniGolf, coming in at £1.79. This is basically crazy golf, and you can use either the buttons or the touchscreen, and you have a certain amount of shots to try and pot the ball whilst navigating a series of obstacles as you do with crazy golf. You will see gems on the stage that you can collect as you go, and if you get stuck on a certain level you can then spend those gems to skip that particular stage, and you can go back and accumulate gems by replaying older levels. It's just a quick and fun time waster, and I like the fact that they've implemented touch controls as well. It has a nice colourful art style and a multiplayer mode which can be played with up to 4 people on just one Switch. Next up then, for the £2 bracket, is a game called Island Maze, which comes in at £2.69, although if you own some of the other games by this publisher, you can potentially get a percentage off this price as well, so could pick it up for even cheaper. This is a puzzle game that uses a low poly art style, and I really do appreciate that style. I think it looks lovely. You basically have to move a cube across a small island trying to get to the goal. Obviously it's never as simple as it sounds, and the catch here is that you have to pick up a small gem along the way and then deposit it at the designated point, therefore unlocking the warp zone to end the level. You have to think about which side of the cube you pick up the gem with, because then obviously you need to land on the designated point with that part of the cube facing downwards. You also have a grading system which relates to how many moves you take as opposed to how long you take, and I like that in games because it means you don't feel the pressure of having to rush. The next game then is the fantastically priced Doom 64, coming in at just £3.99. Now granted, it is nearly 25 years old, but even so, that hasn't stopped other companies in the past from grossly overinflating the prices of games of a similar age. Now I remember this game coming out on the Nintendo 64, a friend of mine owned it and we used to play it quite a lot. Although I do seem to remember that it wasn't particularly well received at the time, it seems to have gained a lot more love since, or at least that's how I remember it anyway. I think it may have had something to do with the fact that GoldenEye was already out on the Nintendo 64 by this point, at least in the UK. I think it may have been the other way around in some other regions, and some people may have felt that the Doom first person mechanics were starting to feel a bit dated by that point, especially in light of its competition. Even so, it's a fantastic game, especially for this price, and if you haven't played any of the older Doom games before, well, you have 1, 2, 3 and this one on the Switch for varying price points should you wish to finally rectify that. Next, for the £4 price bracket, we have a game called Toki Tori. This is basically a puzzle game where you play as a chicken and you have to try and retrieve all of your eggs from each stage, and again, as always with puzzle games, there's a hook, and that is that you have to collect the eggs in a certain order in order to be able to finish the stage. You start each stage with a certain amount of power-ups or tools at your disposal to help you get the eggs. It may be something like a bridge that helps you move across a gap, or the ability to warp one space in order to reach otherwise inaccessible areas, but you have a finite amount of these, so need to be careful with when you use them. This is a lovely little game. It started on the Game Boy Color, although this is the remade version, which has been on a few different consoles, and is very much worth this price for anyone who enjoys puzzle platformers. Next up then you have the £5 bracket, and for this I went with one of the Sega Ages range and I went for Virtua Racing. Now the £5 bracket was actually the hardest one to choose from, with quite slim pickings compared to the other tiers. I don't know if maybe it's because you're in that kind of mid-range price where games are moving away from arcadey high score chasers to something a little more fleshed out, so companies seem to price either side of it, but either way having the Sega Ages in here certainly helped. Now I picked Virtual Racing for a couple of reasons. First of all, to add some variety to the list in terms of having a racing game on there, but also obviously it uses polygons instead of the pixels that you find in most of the Sega Ages games. This is a port of the arcade game that came out in the early 90s, I believe it was, and for that reason it has just the free tracks as opposed to some of the home ports, but the tracks are fantastic. It runs at 60 frames per second this time and has local multiplayer up to 8 players on one screen as well as online as well, and you can also change to a Grand Prix mode where you race 20 laps instead. Next for the £6 bracket, and again in the same way we had the Sega Ages for the £5, we've got the hamster releases for the £6, and I've gone for a game called Shock Troopers. This was at the arcade and also on the Neo Geo system, and is a top-down run and gun in the same vein of things like Commando or Ikari Warriors. This was one of the first games I bought for my Switch. It was one of the early releases, and I bought it because as much as I love Metal Slug, another classic run and gun, also available for this price, I'd played it so many times that I wanted to experience something different, so plumped for Shock Troopers instead, and it really is a great deal of fun. You have a few different characters to choose from and can choose a team of 3 to take into battle with you. As it's top down you have 8-way directional fire, and although it gets very hectic as run and guns tend to, it's actually very fair and definitely beatable without using a whole bunch of continues if you just take the time to practice with it. Its sequel Shock Troopers 2 is also on the Switch. I've never played that one, although I've heard it isn't as good. I don't know if that is the case, but there are a host of these arcade archive games on the Switch and there are some real gems in there for sure. Next then for the £7 bracket is a game called Rebel Cops. Now this one I haven't played personally, this was one that Mark has recommended in the past, so I'm putting it in on his recommendation. Now it's actually a spin-off of a game I most certainly have played and really enjoyed called This Is the Police. This Is the Police is a resource management game where you play as the chief of police and you need to send your colleagues out, making sure that you don't spread yourself too thin, but also making sure that you don't send people out without the appropriate backup. There was a sequel to that game which introduced turn-based combat as well, and this spin-off takes just that turn-based combat and turns it into its own game. It relies very much on stealth in terms of the combat mechanics, and for £7.99 you're getting yourself a bit of a bargain here. It uses the interesting art style that goes across all of the games in this series, quite a basic look on the surface but very effective in practice, and this may well be one that not many people know about.
Should try to arrest the criminals, not kill them. You have at your disposal an arsenal of non-lethal weapons and equipment, as well as special tactical perks, which you can unlock as you upgrade your rebels. But what if violence seems inevitable? Knock knock!
Next then for the £8 bracket we've got a game called Rise of Insanity, which goes for £8.99. Now this is a first-person psychological horror game where you play as a psychologist who is trying to help a patient discover his past, but at the same time your own life starts to get called into question and a mystery will unfold as you play. I'm actually playing through this one myself at the minute, so it might be one that ends up on a future Battle in the Backlog episode, and so far it's schlocky fun. It makes a use of jump scares at times to scare you, and I've certainly enjoyed what I've played of it so far. I've mentioned before my wife and I play horror games quite a lot together, and this is an ideal one for that, so for that price of £8.99 you could do a lot worse. Now for the £9 bracket then, and as I said we're starting to look at more fleshed out experiences. Here we have Cat Quest coming in at £9.99. This is an ARPG where you play as a cat and is a very good game, especially for this price. I was actually surprised that it was priced as low as this. There is also a sequel, Cat Quest 2, which is a couple of pounds more. I think it's £12.99, so obviously not eligible for this list, but I just want to highlight that to you if you are interested, because it's not much more money for a newer entry in the series. You can also get a physical version of both games on one cartridge, and again, when you do come across it, it's not actually that expensive, so that might be another route. And the final game then, coming in for the £10 bracket, this is Stardew Valley, coming in at £10.99. Now Stardew Valley was a game I'd played a little bit of. I've had it on my Switch for quite a while now, but I'd only played about an hour of it, and it was only about a week or so, maybe 2 weeks ago, that I was looking for something to play with my daughter, and kind of almost remembered that I had it, and we've played a good few hours of it together since. Not in traditional co-op, just doing a bit and then passing it over to each other, and she's really enjoying it. For anyone who hasn't played or heard of it before, Stardew Valley is a farm life simulator where you take on a farm and try to renovate it, improving it, growing crops, eventually getting animals, livestock, potentially getting married to someone from the town, etc, etc. Very much like the old Harvest Moon, now Story of Season games. This one is potentially a huge time sink, with some people putting hundreds and hundreds of hours into it. It's an incredibly relaxing game, it has a lovely charm to it, and it was one of those games where I hadn't really appreciated just how good it was until I stopped to put the time into it, and it certainly helped having my daughter play it with me. So there you have it then, another 10 games. I think there's a nice mixture there of very short arcadey experiences up to ones that could, as I said, last you a good couple of hundred hours. Please do have a look at some of the previous parts in the series to find some other games for a very good price if you are gaming on a budget, or please do feel free to suggest any games in the comments section that you feel would fit into this series well, and just make myself and anyone else aware of what's out there. It's always nice to pick up a bargain. Anyway, a quick thank you to our Patreons as always for your continued support, and to each and every one of you for watching our videos. Take care, stay safe, and until next time, happy gaming.